As I mentioned, it could be $1 trillion day today. Now, I did email the IRS because there's an obligation to protect, defend, and enforce the requirements of the law. Yes, my rights, the rights of my sons, the rights of Marilyn and her kids, and the rights of those that are American citizens that pay taxes. And for the IRS to just kind of say, well, we're not involved. I think they are. See, not only do they collect the taxes for the United States Treasury, they have an obligation to protect the taxes that they collect. Yes, that they're not spent on lawsuits that I'm going to file because they're not frivolous. See, when you don't protect my rights as an American citizen, yes, when you don't give me reasonable notice and an opportunity to be heard, yes, when you don't have actual jurisdiction over the parties, the minors, and the subject matter, yes, when the respondent doesn't receive actual notice of court hearings and you don't have to do what the court record finds, yes, and then you don't enforce the actual requirements of the full faith and credit provisions of the VAWA, yes, and every state of the United States has to enforce your fraudulent court orders because you won't remove them. Each and every state that has the full faith and credit provisions of the United States Constitution, yes, they actually are supported from the taxation of the United States population. Now, when you don't require the fraudulent signature of the petitioner that fraudulently used the state court system, yes, to motion the court for a fraudulent default dissolution of marriage. And then you don't enforce forgery laws, yes, fraud laws, imposter laws, yes, and you won't enforce kidnapping laws. The truth of the matter is the taxation of the nation's population is being supported, right, for the fraudulent two-count criminal complaint where I was not in Brennan, Washington on June 16th of 2017 because somebody said that I was cyber stalking or violating the fraudulent court order. Yes. Now, this whole concept of someone being the petitioner, yes, when they're not the actual petitioner, right. And then someone saying, well, he was in Brennan, Washington when I wasn't, yes. And then police and sheriff's departments get emails from me on that very day from this very location, right, where they don't feel a compulsion to have to inform the judiciary of any sort of fraud. It's retaliation to not have the state court seal. Ooch. It is fraudulent to not have an actual signature of the county clerk. Yes, it's fraud to allow for the issuance by any court commissioner or judge, yes, any court order where the individual that motions the court doesn't acknowledge the court order, and then to issue teaching credentials to somebody that happened to fraudulently use the court system because you just don't want to enforce the laws of the United States. Ooh. You remember when I explained to you why it is important that you cannot have incomplete documents known as court instruments? Yes. And you can't arbitrarily have people put in mental institutions. It is retaliation on the part of the school district to participate in any sort of criminal complaint where I had sent approximately 1 million emails. Yes, that my rights are being violated, known as citizen complaints. Now, for the IRS to say they have no liability, they do. And as a citizen, I will sue them for collecting taxes from what they know is fraud. Yes, and then allowing, yes, for those in places of authority of the United States of a government to intentionally spend money, Jefferson County, for unreasonable and vexatious court your proceedings, yes, Jefferson County, for allowing the city of Sequim, Clallam County, in the state of Washington, yes, to have me arrested when they're sending to the wrong address and knowingly sending to the wrong address notice of court hearings, yes, and then saying that I'm crazy for not understanding my rights as a citizen of the United States. Now, let's say I went through each city, county, state, and federal government that received any of the taxation. Yes. Now, it's not that, okay? I can sue the IRS for refusing, okay? See, there's this cliche, yes, taxation without representation. I don't like it. Oh, I really don't. It's something they said during the Revolutionary War or sometime after that. What I like saying is any employee of any department or agency of the United States government, right, that is obligated to protect the actual taxation of the nation, that doesn't require the enforcement of the laws, is personally liable for their employment, yes, and then their agency or department is liable for allowing my right to sue them. Pooh! Now, this couple $100 billion, yeah, you intentionally sent court notices to the wrong address. After I had moved December of 2011, yes. September of 2017, yeah. You allowed for the fraud of the dishonest service of a pastor, yes. You allowed for me to have to go through mental health evaluations when I tell you that it's against the law, yes. And then you say, well, the IRS has no interest in this, but they really do. What happens when school districts don't have any money? Because I sue them for the triple damages of the fraud of refusing to enforce the civil rights of Americans. Now, yesterday I told you the mean way of saying that, the 13th and 14th Amendment. But I would think that I do have the right to the equal protections of the law. I have the right to not have any sort of criminal history, arrest history, or child or adult abuse information entered in on any state court criminal investigation center or the National Criminal Investigation, yes, or the NCIC, yes, information center. I think that I have the right to be ordained, right? I have the right to employment, yes, without having to pay back child support. I talked about those treaty obligations yesterday, and then I'm thinking about this manifest injustice, yes, of having show cause hearings where I don't get the actual notice of the court hearings and I'm not able to type up a little declaration of my own where I can say, well, my record was expunged and I have no arrest record. Right. And you as a state don't think I have the right to sue each and every government agency and department of the United States of America. Now, when I look at the revenue of the Internal Revenue Service, all of that money that goes to the United States Treasury, yes, they get paid as a budget. Yes. The federal government approves their expenses to collect the taxes. Yes. But they are given a certain number of employees to not only enforce the obligation to pay income tax, yes, but to protect the taxes that they collect for the United States Treasury, yes. And when they allow for the corruption, yes, of the fraud, yes, of they are liable. Now, why don't we throw a couple $100 billion at the IRS today? Triple damages. Any and all government employees that know of the fraud, yes, of using imposters, right, to be the individuals that allege that they were victimized when they weren't, yes, as if you could use the judicial system for a show. Now, this debt collection, yes, why don't you get me all of those that owe back taxes? Yes. I just want to know every American citizen that said, I don't have enough money to pay. What if I sued the IRS for refusing to collect taxes that happen to be my actual damages of every judgment in every state of the United States? I think we should get to collecting taxes today. Yes, we should. So get me all the debt collection of the Internal Revenue Service for every American citizen that just didn't have it, okay? Because when I get to suing, I'm going to want all the back taxes of every citizen of this great nation so that when I sue each and every state of the United States, there will be no mistaking that you will not miss your tax payments because I will sue the federal.